Thank you for tuning in to the Starkey Multifamily Podcast. I have with me Terry Judge. Terry has his own company where he does cost segregation. So Terry, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Reed. Thanks for having me.
Terry, let's start out. How did you get into cost seg?
Man, it's a loaded question. So my been an entrepreneur, as we were just sharing, at a young age. So I was had some businesses early on and was in the energy business. Was in and then that kind of led to got introduced to cost segregation really by accident. I just thought it was so intriguing. I was a B2B consultant doing some advisory services in the green building space and sustainability. But my background was engineering and not a CPA by training. But stumbled across these rulings that it just intrigued me. I don't know why I was drawn to it, but I ended up one night staying up late, printing everything out, reading everything I could about this particular subject that we're going to talk about. And I was just blown away by that the IRS actually has a program for real estate investors where they can create all this additional cash flow and defer taxable income. So I immediately called my CPA the next morning. I'm like, so what do you know about cost segregation? And he's like, well, funny that you ask. A couple months ago, I was at a seminar in Ohio and some guy was on stage talking about this very topic. I said, well, do you do it? And he said, no. And I said, why? He says, well, there's things, that there's components of a cost segregation study that CPAs just don't do. They just don't do it. And the more I dug, I kind of realized why. And so I saw just a massive hole, not only in the investment side of the real estate investors, but also on the accounting side. This was being missed, and the IRS was not promoting this. So a lot of people didn't know that this even existed. And I just, I don't know. I ended up just starting a cost segregation company and ended up partnering with somebody from the old Arthur Anderson days. That was, more of the accounting side, and we partnered up, and I ended up just, really becoming an expert in it fairly quickly. It seemed like I knew a little bit more than the next guy just because I jumped in it a lot. And what I found was a lot of people were not utilizing this. A lot of people never heard of this, and it was just this great strategy that was being missed on almost every real estate transaction that was happening around the country. And so, therefore, fast forward 14 years, Reed, I'm going on. January 1st I'll be doing this for 14 years, doing cost segregation studies nationally. So we've been in every single project you can pretty much imagine, every situation, every accounting question, working with such awesome clients and entrepreneurs and investors around the country. So now we've worked with we worked with thousands of, we've done thousands of transactions. We've worked with, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of accounting firms and CPA firms doing this, helping their clients maximize this, I don't want to call it mysterious tax strategy because it's really become widely used now, thank God. But it's still misunderstood and underutilized on a big scale. So I'm trying to fill that void, and I spent a lot of my time educating. So thank you for having me on this podcast.
Well, let's talk about what is cost seg.
Sure. So cost segregation, I guess, in the simplest and layman's terms, it is the way to accelerate a building much more rapidly than the normal accounting methods. So in the United States, you have something called the straight line method, and that's where most accounting firms will depreciate a real estate, a building, let's just call it any type of building, call it multifamily. And then that building, that multifamily apartment building, will depreciate over 27 and a half years. Well, cost segregation is a way where we can break down or break apart the building in certain components, such as mechanical, wiring, plumbing, landscape improvements. There's all these different components that now qualify for a much shorter life. In some cases, a 5-year life, okay, like carpet and fixtures and certain drop ceilings, raised floors. It goes on and on and on. There's hundreds of components that qualify now. So instead of writing a building off over 27 and a half years, you now can choose to write your building off over a much shorter life, which would be, let's say, 5 years for all the interior of the building, In the exterior, which would be land improvements, depreciate now over 15 years. So it's a time value of money proposition. So why would you let the IRS hold on to your money for 27 and a half years, and then on office and commercial, that's 39 years, where you can get the money in the first 5 years? And so it creates that time value of money. Take the dollar today, it's worth more than the dollar down the road. That is the whole concept. In other words, if you hit the lottery tomorrow for $1 million, would you want to be paid out over 39 years or 27 and a half years for multifamily, or would you want to be paid out over 5? I mean, you might be dead.
Right.
Who knows what's going to be happening in 27 and a half years? So obviously the answer is you want to take that money in today's dollar. So we go into a building and we can allocate or reallocate all of these components inside the building, and we can depreciate those assets over a 5-year period, okay? And therefore you get this front-loaded depreciation. So all this depreciation that you would have to wait for, you now can use it and utilize it in the early life of that building, therefore mitigating or deferring income tax in some cases for years. So people are still paying 35% at the highest tax bracket, where we can mitigate that down to 0 in some cases. So it's huge when we're talking about people that are building buildings, buying buildings for $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million. They're now their initial cash benefit in that they can take immediately is huge, and it just generates more cash flow right out of the gate.
Yeah, so I think just to clarify, for maybe some of the newer listeners who are less familiar, so you're taking your depreciation and front loading it. But what is that depreciation, and why do people want that?
So as you buy a building, say you and I buy a building, a multifamily property, let's say, and that building is cash flowing, right? So you buy that building because it's cash flowing, and you're paying ordinary income on that cash, right? So what a cost segregation study does is that you can use that depreciation to offset your ordinary income in today's dollars. Therefore, you're basically creating additional cash flow that you're going to keep in your pocket. So instead of paying Uncle Sam the tax bill, you no longer have to pay that tax bill, because you're using depreciation, which is the 8th wonder of the world, to offset your income for years to come. It depends on how much depreciation we carve out, depends on, everything is tied to, the cost of the building. And, it's a beautiful thing. So, we here at Core, we run a benefit analysis where we can actually show, your listeners, or we show our clients, we show prospective clients, exactly based on their building and how much money they pay for their building, what their first year and second year and third year cash benefit is going to look like. And as we carve out all this new depreciation, that actually has a 20-year carry forward, by the way. So people are like, what? So you never lose it at all. It just carries forward based on your income and based on your investors' situation. Because if you have multiple investors in the deal, you're syndicating, each of those owners or investors of the building are now going to be able to take advantage of this new depreciation on their K1s. So everybody gets increased, basically, income based on that depreciation. So it's very, very powerful. And what we see as a company, it's usually an afterthought. When we try to spend a lot of time, Reed, just getting people educated, that this should be a very proactive, cost segregation should be proactive, and it should be a part of every transaction that's happening around the country. This should be in front, in using this to build your ROI for the investors, because of this depreciation mechanism that you're taking. Again, you're taking the money in today's dollars, and $1 today is worth more than $1 down the road. So that really is the concept behind accelerated depreciation. Now, I will say that for the listeners and for a little education purposes, this is nothing new. This has been in the tax code since the late 60s. I mean, it was called component depreciation back in the day. And then it went away in the tax reform in '86. So it just went away because it was being abused. There wasn't a lot of rules around it. And then it came back in the mid 90s and nobody knew about it. Nobody knew. I mean, the big companies, the big boys, the Fortune 500 companies, obviously the big four, the big eight accounting firms were all over this. Real estate tax attorneys were all over this. And but the main middle America and guys like us that are buying apartment buildings, we never knew about it. We never knew it existed. So now it's over time, it's become, people are starting to catch on to this. They're starting to utilize this, which is great all around the country. So hopefully I cleared that up, but happy to take any, maybe break it down a little bit more.
Yeah, I got a lot of questions to go with this. So, so I think another misconception, maybe from outsiders, is, or maybe people just don't care, but on why does the government allow you to depreciate the value of a building, which clearly is not going down in value, or they're saying it is. So, what is the reason the government would provide that program? And what? So let's start there. So why do you think the government allows that?
It's one of those things that not only do they allow it, they just keep improving upon it. It's just one area in the tax code that just keeps getting better. I've been doing this for almost 14 years now, and about every 2 to 3 years, there's a new caveat that gets put into this type of service called cost segregation. It just keeps getting better. I mean, so they allow it. It's part of, that's why real estate is the most attractive investment that one can do. That's why you and I love what you're doing, and you're building your business, and in the community that we belong to, it's just so awesome. Everyone's, really realizing that, this long-term, this retirement program, that these 401ks aren't really the best route, or the stock market might not be the best route. So real estate is really the only mechanism that allows you to not only leverage money from debt, and syndication, but it also allows you to take advantage of the tax code and defer income. In some cases, if you plan this right through 1031 exchanges and through other planning, even when you sell the building, you can still kick the taxes down the road, and therefore build your empire so much faster, because you're just leveraging the tax code, and it's legal. I mean, we've done thousands of studies. We've saved our clients, now I'm boasting a little bit, but over $1 billion, okay? And we've had zero disallowances from the IRS. So one of the questions I get is like, oh, is this aggressive? Is this going to cause an audit? And the answer is no. This is not aggressive. There's two pathways in the tax code, as I mentioned earlier. There's the straight line method, which is the normal accounting method, which every CPA takes depreciation on a building. You get to depreciate, you get your write-offs, but they're slow, and then you get to take or you can elect to take the fast way, which we call under the maker's system. I'm not going to get into that, but it's where cost segregation lives, and that is the accelerated method. And it's your call. Some people say, oh, no, I'm going to depreciate the old method way, or the old school way. I'm fine with that. I don't want to accelerate. That's fine. People sometimes there's situations where you don't need extra depreciation. Okay, and maybe I'll touch on that here at the end. And then other times, for the most part, especially if you're buying a building now, the very best time to do a cost segregation study is once the building goes into service, and we can make sure that all of the components in the building are going to depreciate rapidly, so you can maximize your cash flow benefits from a cost seg study. So that is huge in terms of, so why do they do it? I don't know. It's one of those things that's just in the tax code. And, and I spend most of my day really just kind of sharing with why it works, why it's legal, how to take advantage of it. And we take, every property that they'd say, okay, let me explore this a little bit. I have a building, I own a building, I paid $2.5 million. I bought it 5 years ago. Could this work for me? Well, the IRS has a caveat in the tax code where we can go back in time, we can recalculate the missed depreciation. The IRS allows a one-time catch-up in the current tax year. It's an automatic consent, meaning that they don't contest it, and we do not have to amend returns. So the investors and our clients love that, because it's never a good idea to amend tax returns, in my opinion. People don't like to do that for various reasons. And therefore, we can go back in time. Actually, legally, the IRS lets us go back to 1987 in the code to pick up missed depreciation. Now, we don't go back that far anymore because that asset's been completely depreciated, but we will go back 5 and 10, in some cases even 15 years, and recalculate missed depreciation. So that's huge we call that the hidden treasures program, because there's money trapped in these buildings that a lot of people never knew existed, and they never knew we could go back in time and pick up and do this automatic consent, which is called the 481 adjustment on the technical side of things, which we prepare as a firm, and we hand that off. Then we put together a 100-page or more engineering report that breaks down every component inside the building, right down to the electrical outlets, where those assets can be now compressed and written off over a much shorter life. And again, every time we do that, that creates upfront depreciation, which equals offsetting your taxable income, which then equals additional cash flow to the bottom line.
So there must, when you talk about going back, there's got to be a time frame where it starts to cancel out, because the overall depreciation is identically the same, correct? So
it is. You're either taking it now or you're taking it later.
So there's got to be a point where front loading it doesn't matter, because you're already so close to the end that
it just depends. Now, again, like it all depends on the basis of the building, what's been taken in the building. Remember, a lot of those assets have been depreciating over the long term, 39 years. Some of those assets in those buildings have been removed through tenant improvements, and guess what? Are still on the books depreciating. So when we see that, we can clean up the depreciation. There's other little caveats in the tax code under the tangible property regs, and I'm not going to get too technical today on the podcast. However, there's other opportunities when we go back in time to clean up the depreciation schedules and do that look back study. But we have a software system where we dump in the information of the building, but usually it's the purchase price or construction cost, the date of service, the asset class. So what kind of building is it? We usually ask for square footage, that kind of thing. How big is the acreage? And that's it. We put it into our system, and our software has all of the industry updates, all the IRS, tax codes, and it'll actually spit out what the immediate tax, whether we're going back or if we're starting to go forward, it'll actually pinpoint the immediate, tax savings and net present value to do it or not to do it. It's a 12-page report. CPAs love it, and we do that due diligence up front. And so we know exactly, so the client knows exactly how this can impact them, whether to do it or not to do it, and how much depreciation do they need or do they want, and then we go forward. So it doesn't fit every situation. For instance, if you're going to sell the building under 3 years, I would recommend not to do a cost segregation study because of the recapture rules. You don't have enough time to take advantage of the time value of money, and therefore we would not recommend. So if you're going to hold the property from 3 to 5 years or longer, and it's a cash flow play, and the building is making money, it's profitable, then it doesn't make business sense not to do a cost segregation study. Now you're just leaving money on the table.
Mhm.
Okay. So if the building is not profitable, or let's say it's just now ramping up, or it's still going through improvements, maybe there's no date of occupancy yet, it's still going through construction, maybe there's a big rent, there's no tenants in it yet, or you're going to flip it, okay, then those two scenarios, it's not making money, it's going to be flipped in the short term, then those two scenarios, I suggest not to do a cost seg study. Other than that, most of the time, as long as the building, what we look at here at Core, as long as the building is 600,000 and above, it makes sense as far as cost or purchase price or construction cost. About 600 grand is what we look for and above to do a cost seg study. People always ask me, what's too small? Nothing's too big, but But that's on the small side economically for our fee for my engineers to go into the building. Usually it's about 600,000 and above. Makes total sense. We like $1 million. We like 800 to $1 million, but because, and I'll touch on some of the new tax rulings that just kicked it up another notch. We can go down to, in some cases, even $500,000. I mean, especially if there's, maybe there's a couple buildings that they own that they paid, $400,000 or $500,000, and there's a couple buildings that makes total sense for us to get in there and carve out that depreciation and do a cost segregation study.
So could somebody do this? Let's say they have, a handful of 6 units. Maybe the price would be more important. So, here in Michigan, that might, be take a handful of 6 units to get to $1 million. Could you do it on several properties and make that beneficial for your fee?
Yes. Yeah, we can bundle it all under as one project, and price that out to where it makes economical sense. We do that all the time.
Now, is there a size limit? So, I mean, I would imagine if you had 600 single-family homes, that probably would not work, or would it even legally work on?
Actually, we're doing more. Believe it or not, we're doing more residential investment properties, because under the tax code, cost segregation works for commercial, industrial, manufacturing, medical, golf courses, all of those asset classes. But even residential qualifies for residential investment property. So we just did one that the guy had 13 residential homes, and we just cost segged it out. And we literally got this guy net in his pocket $220,000.
Really?
$220,000. So anybody listening, if you own a lot of residential homes, now one residential home does not make sense.
Right. 2
or 3 might not make sense. But for some of the bigger operators out there, they've got 10 and up, and let's say 100. When we're quoting one now, the guy's got 300, residential homes. So anyway, so that's that. We can just let everybody know we can do residential investment property. It still makes sense as long as there's, like I said, maybe 5, 10, 15 or more. We can run some numbers on those.
Yeah, I would bet almost nobody knows that. I mean, maybe just not the people I talk to, but the single family, the guys who own single family, I don't think any of them are thinking cost segregation.
No, I agree. Even like condos down in, like Naples and down in Florida, people that own, they should set those up in an LLC. And if they rent those out, let's say 6 months out of the year, and let's say they bought that condo. I have a friend right now that we're talking to him. He paid about $600,000 for the condo, and they're putting in another $500,000 because they're gutting it, and they're going to rent it out. That's a perfect candidate for a cost seg study. Just as long as it's a residential investment asset. Now, we do a lot of senior living, hotels. We do a ton of multifamily, office, especially when they're going through renovations. The IRS has something called disposition. It's called partial asset disposition. So if you buy, so you and I partner up, Reed, and we go buy a, $800,000 apartment building, and we're going to renovate it, and we're going to be removing old assets out of the building. There's other tax incentives on the abandoned assets that are being thrown in the dumpster, because the IRS still looks at it as those assets that are being thrown out still have full value because you're the new owner of the property. So that's when we go in and we do our engineering analysis, and we look at the as-built, we look at what's being removed, and then so we do a phase 1 essentially, and then we do a phase 2 on the actual finishes and the renovations, where that can now take what's called bonus depreciation, which I'll touch on here in a second. So you can double dip on the tax, all these tax programs, when you hire a professional engineering firm like Core that really, we're deep in the weeds with understanding the mechanisms of all these new improved tax incentives that have come out over the last 3 to 4 years. And the big one was just recently that came out on September 27, 2017, which is what we call first year bonus depreciation. You want me to get into that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I know I'm rattling off this stuff You can tell I get pretty excited about it still after 14 years. So bonus depreciation has been, it's been a game changer for the real estate investment industry, because now what is, if I rewind the conversation in the beginning of when you asked me what cost seg was, and we're breaking instead of the building just depreciating over 27 and a half years for multifamily, and then 39 years for regular buildings, office, commercial, industrial, what have you. Those buildings, if you buy a building for $1 million in the old days, right, everything in that building, everything, all the interior, exterior, everything in that transaction is depreciating over the long term. So in comes cost segregation. Now we're allowed to break all the building components apart in the shorter life, and you get that depreciation. And the big buckets are 5 years and 15 years. 15 years is for land improvements, and then 5 years is mainly for all the interior, such as some specialty lighting, some electrical, plumbing, mechanical. Every building type has a little bit of different rules on what we can and what we can't take from a cost segregation, doing it correctly. But now with bonus depreciation, you don't have to wait even 15 years, and you don't have to wait even 5 years. The IRS now allows all the depreciation to be front loaded into year one. And now you can take all of it in first year. So now we're seeing, we're writing off, let's say a building that costs $1 million. We can write up to 40% of the purchase price in year one. So when you have active real estate investors that have taxable incomes, they're making money, right, through all of their real estate. They need this additional depreciation. Now, again, if they can't use it, it'll carry forward, but they can take all this depreciation now. So it's become a real game changer when you're talking to real estate people, that they're like, oh my God, I can take all this in year one. The cool thing about depreciation is as we create all this depreciation for the owners, they're making money from multiple entities. It's not just one building that you get to take. It's not one for one when you're a real estate investor. The beautiful thing is, let's say you've got income coming and it's flowing through all your LLCs and it's coming to you personally. And then we depreciate, or we do a cost segregation study on one of your buildings, and we create $400,000, let's say, in additional depreciation. And they have a $400,000 tax bill, let's say, from, they're making money. They can use that to offset as income is flowing through all these other entities. So it's pretty huge.
So you touched on this a little bit. I just want to make sure we covered everything. But when or who would want to do a cost seg? So you talked about an asset over 600,000.
Yep.
We talked a little bit about how long you've owned the building, and maybe some other factors that might come into play. What else is there that would make you think that somebody would be a good candidate?
It's pretty universal now at this point. I think it needs to be looked at per project, but really anybody, other than the two scenarios that I painted earlier, it pretty much makes sense, especially once the building goes into service. So as people are looking to buy a property, somebody maybe just closed on a property, it behooves them to really take a look at and see how a cost segregation study can help them. I mean, and we offer a no cost. I know other firms out there offer, a no cost benefit analysis, savings analysis that you can see it in black and white. It's very accurate, it's very detailed, and it shows it right on the front page. So we provide that service, for anybody, especially in your community. We'll do, no cost. We'll run the numbers, and that shows in black and white to do it or not to do it. And then we always talk to the CPA. We get the CPA involved right away. We make sure everybody's on the same page. So we do that due diligence up front. So there's no issues down the road. Okay. And we work through those. Some people ask me, well, what if we sell the building? What happens then? Well, it depends on how long you've held the building, how much depreciation did you take? There's other little things that we do, recapture planning. I can run recapture analysis to actually show, because let me just say this, and not to get too deep, but we're breaking apart assets out of what we call real property, which is Section 1250, and we're literally shifting them into personal property under Revenue Ruling Section 1245. Which basically means the way we're able to do this legally from the IRS standpoint is we're moving things into personal property, and we're able to write that off. But those assets have a declining balance now because we're writing them off over 5 years, so they don't have much asset values left by the time that 3 to 5 year window comes if you're going to sell the building. Therefore, more would be pushed into the real property. Therefore, you can mitigate recapture. I don't want to go into an accounting class here, but just understand that there are certain things that we look at as a firm to make sure you don't get upside down when we get into that scenario. So it's all played out up front, and you'll have a good grasp about, like people say, hey, Terry, I'm never selling this asset. They're like, this thing cash flows great. I mean, I'm never getting rid of this thing. Well, you got to do a cost seg study. I mean, and the only way is I get into the bonus depreciation and to legitimize your building and your accounting, you have to get a cost seg study done to do this correctly. You can't just wing it and make stuff up and just grab certain things and put them in your depreciation schedules and call it a day. I mean, some CPAs that we've come across actually do that, and they try to save their clients a little bit of money so they don't have to pay our fees to come in and do this particular study. But they really, for the amount of cost that we would charge and the amount of additional tax savings that we are going to create, and then we do it according to the IRS, meaning that if the IRS ever questioned all this additional depreciation, we have all of our T's crossed and our I's dotted, and we stay within all of the IRS parameters. That's why we don't have, there's no issues down the road. So if the IRS ever came back and someone just tried to kind of wing it, and they're just putting stuff on and they're writing stuff off on the depreciation schedules, they're taking kind of a low-hanging fruit approach, the IRS could disallow all of it. So there could be some ramifications if not done correctly. So all I'm saying is that, get a professional cost segregation study completed. That way, we give 100% audit defense. So with our fees, everything is already inclusive, and we provide our clients 100% audit defense. So if the IRS ever questioned anything on the report, we would come and then, kind of talk about how we came up with our methodologies, and everything is cross-referenced to case law, revenue rulings, memorandums regarding the cost segregation rules that the IRS put out way back in the day. So, and like I said, zero disallowances, knock on wood, after 14 years of doing this. So, yeah, we do it the right way. We don't skimp.
So when is the best time for somebody to get a hold of you? So if they're buying is it while they're buying it, while they're underwriting it? Because you had talked about figuring it into the whole plan of a property. Should they wait till they've closed, or when is the best time to reach out?
Anytime is good to reach out. Anytime. If you're thinking about buying a building, if you're thinking about constructing a building, if you're thinking about renovating a building, reach out to us. We'd be happy to run a benefit analysis. That's really where everything starts. Okay. And then you have that, as a planning tool, you can bring that to your CPA, you can bring that to your investors, and you can actually show them that there's an extra, $500,000, $700,000 in additional tax savings, in the early life of that building. That's huge. That opens up all kinds of new cash flow for the investors, right? I mean, or it's not just the investors either. It could be owner occupied. A lot of people don't know this. You could be a doctor and that you have a building that you operate in. Well, you qualify for cost segregation as well. It could be an owner occupied situation, just so you know. But so, anytime is good. If you're considering it, we'll run the numbers. We'll walk you through it. We answer your questions, because it is new. People are like, oh my God, people get kind of overwhelmed with this, but really it's not that complicated once you understand a few major things. And your CPAs out there, we work with hundreds and hundreds of some of the top CPAs out there, and they love cost segregation. They'll know immediately. We're not a CPA firm. We're a specialty tax and engineering firm, but we're not an actual accounting firm. So we partner with CPA firms to onboard their clients to make sure that they're maximizing all of especially some of the new and improved tax rulings that just came out at the end of 17 and now 18. So if you are, let's see, we're going into the end of the year. A lot of people right now, it's December 5th, 2019, and everybody that, we're doing a lot of this stuff now. We're very ramped up, and we're doing tons and tons of cost segs right now. So people that we talked to last in the summertime are now reaching out to us. They're like, oh man, can you get my cost seg study done? We're ready to go. So we're just like buried, but it's awesome. I'm used to this. We've been doing this for so long. But so we can help with that tax planning right now as we're winding down, 2019. And if you have taxable income, if you have depreciation, let me back up. If you have taxable income and you're facing, and you've taken maybe you've taken the normal depreciation, you've taken your deductions, you still have a ton of money, you have a building, that's when a cost seg can really come in handy when you're doing your tax planning with your CPA.
Awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, that's been a fascinating conversation. So before we go, let's talk a little bit about, your company and how people can contact you if they want to go and do cost segregation on their own property. And
yeah. So, our website is a good place to kind of check us out. You can get a hold of me through our website, which is www.coreadvisors.net. You can find us through coreadvisors.net. Or you can just shoot me an email directly, and I'd be happy I'll respond quickly to you. My email is tjudge, so T and then JUDGE at coreadvisors.net, not com.net. tjudge at coreadvisors.net. Shoot me an email. Let me know what you got cooking. I have a phenomenal team. I have some of the best, technical and engineers on my team. We're very blessed to have one of my guys has over 19 years of cost segregation experience. 19 years. So he was, we call him one of the forefounders of cost seg, because, that's kind of when it really started rolling. So anyways, that's it. I would say that's, yeah.
What areas of the country did you say you can do? You said nationwide?
National. Yeah. So we're based in Detroit. Here, we're here in Detroit. I'm in Detroit, born and raised here in Detroit, and we're doing projects all over the country. So it's a federal program, and my engineers, we fly them everywhere, and they will physically come out to your building and do the site visit. That's step one of our process. Yeah. So, matter of fact, can I close on that? I'll just touch on that real quick. So step one is really the benefit analysis. No cost. We'll show you what that looks like. We'll show you exactly what your cash benefit would be. Step two, we go to kind of proposal. We talk to you about, okay, this is what it's going to cost, all inclusive. Then we go out to then let's say we kick the project off. Our engineer will actually come out to the building. During that process, we're gathering certain information on the building, such as an appraisal, such as plans, prints, blueprints, if there's been renovations, just basic information on the building. And then, from there, it takes us about, from the site visit, 3 to 4 weeks to complete the project, just so you understand the timeline of how long these things take. Usually we can get these things done in 3 to 4 weeks. If we're cranking on the normal schedule, usually it's about 4 weeks to get the studies done.
That's fantastic.
We do a wrap-up call with your CPA. We go over the numbers, boom, and then we wrap up the report.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic, Terry. I love the content. I'm sure a ton of people are going to benefit from this call. So I appreciate you being on.
Well, I appreciate you, Reed. I appreciate everything that you're doing. Every time I talk to you, I also learn something new from all the stuff that you're doing. So I love it, man. So thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
To you and everybody else.
All right.
Have a good day.